You're already perfect and the problem lies outside of you. And that's propaganda.
The idea that I don't need a man, like I can self-propel myself.
I think for the first time in history, the average man doesn't need a woman, and the average woman doesn't need a man. Like without women, the human race would die out. And without men, there would be no one to run and manage the infrastructure of society. There's a lot of talk about gender equality in certain professions, but there's certainly no feminists who are trying to make sure that 50% of bricklayers are women, 50% other women that are more and more dictating that it's cringe to want to be a wife, to want to be a mother. A modern woman should despise those things. A modern woman should advance her own independence and self-interest, should chase after career and education. So now we have half the women functionally ignoring 93% of men.
Wow.
That is sort of like 6 or 7 women to every 1 man. A man who is 5'8", which is slightly below average height, would have to earn an additional $140,000 a year.
Wow.
To be perceived as equally attractive as the 5'11.5" guy.
Wow. $140,000.
In addition. So he would have to make $240,000 a year, which is
advice in general to people watching. If you're gonna give a piece of advice to women and then a separate piece of advice to men. Hey, what's up everyone? It's Nick. I'm back in English mode with my friend Orion. How you doing, man?
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me back, Nick.
Yeah, thanks for coming again. The video we did before did very well.
I'm happy to hear it.
Yeah, I think you explained things really well, and I think we can probably even dive deeper into some of the stuff we talked about last time. But do you want to introduce yourself one more time first for the people?
Sure. My name's Orion Taraban. I am a clinical psychologist with a small private practice based out of California, USA. I have a YouTube channel called Orion Taraban with a few thousand episodes on it, specializing in relationships and personal development. I've written a number of books. One is called The Value of Others, which is a bestseller about gender dynamics in the sexual marketplace. And my most recent book, which is a novel about the final days of painter Vincent van Gogh, Starry Night, just came out last week.
Awesome. Yeah, let's talk about that later, because I'm sure there's actually a lot of Vincent van Gogh fans in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, people love him all over the world, which is kind of ironic because he died penniless in a garret, terrified women his whole life, and only sold a single painting.
Crazy. Yeah. Totally crazy. I got a couple comments last time on our video because we talked about relationships, and you're pretty, I don't know, maybe blunt sometimes. I think you're very articulate, but also you might say things people don't want to hear. Do you think, what do you say to people when they say, this psychologist doesn't like women or things like that?
Oh, I do like women. I mean, I enjoy spending time with women very much. I think that sometimes a lot of the advice that women are hearing isn't very good for their self-nominated goals. I'll give you an example. There's huge differences between, let's say, self-help literature directed towards men and self-help literature directed towards women. When you look at the stuff that's directed towards men, the tone is basically like, if your life sucks, it's your fault. You're not good enough. You have to get better. The world doesn't care. No one's going to hand you money or a relationship or the good things in life just because they have pity on you. Like, man up, find your courage, devote yourself to overcoming your limitations, and then you like earn the good things in life. Okay? Does that resonate with you?
Sure. Totally.
On the contrary, self-help literature directed towards women is sort of like, you're already perfect the way that you are. If there's any kind of problem that you have, it's that there's some sort of internal blockage that's preventing you from seeing how perfect you are already. And the rest of the world is wrong because of different forms of internalized patriarchy or beauty standards for the male gaze. It's the world that's wrong. You're beautiful, you're wonderful, you're perfect just the way that you are. And if you feel anxious or you're not getting the results that you want in life, you're probably coming up against some sort of external problem, which sort of reinforces them as a victim or a passive object of that institutionalized bias.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a very disempowering perspective. It's basically saying that there's nothing that you can do. There's nothing to do. You're already perfect, and the problem lies outside of you. And that's why I think so many movements in today's day and age that seek to advance female interests are really like social propaganda machines. They're trying to change the way that men look at women so that they find a wider proportion of the female sex attractive, for instance, instead of just ones with a symmetrical face who are thin with a low BMI, etc.
That's why you get Calvin Klein commercials with like really obese women, and you're like, this makes no sense that she's on this billboard.
We're all beautiful in our own way.
Yeah.
And that's propaganda. It's designed to allow certain women to compete more successfully in the sexual marketplace because they believe that, again, the women in question already are perfect, and the problem is in the minds of those around the woman. And if you view the problem in that way, of course, you're going to launch social campaigns and not focus on yourself. If you accept that other people are going to have preferences, and that many of those preferences might be cultural but also biologically determined, you could look at yourself and say, maybe I'm not getting the results that I want in the sexual marketplace because I don't conform to certain beauty standards. And there are things that you can do about that, which I think is empowering. So the advice that I often give women is more similar to the advice that men tend to hear, which is take your power back. There are things that you can do about it. If you don't have the results that you want in life, then you might have to change what you're doing. And expecting that the world is going to somehow shift in its axis to accommodate your preferences is somewhat narcissistic and deluded.
Interesting.
And it's out of like a concern and respect for women that I talk in this way. If I really disrespected women, if I really did not care about them, I would say you're doing everything right.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, why would you put yourself out there for criticism if you were, you know what I mean? Like,
oh, sure. It's like, I wouldn't care enough. I would just be gently avoiding it. It's like, you're right. I completely agree with whatever perspective you have, and I would move on to something else because I wouldn't care if they failed.
We talked about this a little bit last time, and I think this is really taking hold in Japan. It's been like this in the States forever, but the idea that I don't need a man, like I can self-propel myself, I can make my own money, why would I need a man? Do you think that's being exacerbated through media? I mean,
I think that's certainly becoming more and more true. I talk about that at the end of my book, as you'll recall. So I think for the first time in history, the average man doesn't need a woman.
The average man doesn't need a woman.
And the average woman doesn't need a man. The average woman needs a lot of men around because men basically keep society running. And an average man needs a lot of women around because women are the gatekeepers of maintaining the population. Like without women, the human race would die out. And without men, there would be no one to run and manage the infrastructure of society.
Just, people might even get mad at that, saying something like that. I mean, it's true.
But we know it's like the vast majority of people who run hydroelectric plants and are doing roadworks and are working in factories, and they're men.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of talk about gender equality in certain professions, but there's certainly no feminists who are trying to make sure that 50% of bricklayers are women, 50% of oil rig technicians are women, and these are essential roles in the infrastructure of society. They're often invisible. We often take them for granted, but the society would look very different, and it would be much less comfortable without those men who are doing those hard jobs every day.
100%. And I think a lot of men now give a lot of respect and to women that do want to have babies and stuff like it's. I
think it's other women that are more and more dictating that it's cringe to want to be a wife, to want to be a mother. A modern woman should despise those things. A modern woman should advance her own independence and self-interest, should chase after career and education, and do what feels right for her. And that catering to more traditional values is almost like betraying the cause of womanhood. And that's what we've seen in the West, and perhaps that's being exported here to Japan as well.
But a lot of the comments like that I saw in our last video, they were saying the men suck now, so why would I want a man in the first place?
Well, okay, fair enough. I don't think that we should expect that a woman is going to be with a man that she finds unattractive or uninteresting just to have a relationship.
Yes.
That's fair. I don't have a problem with that. Is it, though, possibly the case that women's expectations for what a man should provide have become unreasonably inflated? Yeah, I think
I want
that's
to touch
also
on
part of
that.
it.
I want to touch on that because we were talking about, you asked how tall I was before we were recording, and I'm 5'6", which is, I think, about 167. Maybe I'm shorter than that. I'm not sure. But I've always been short. And recently, never till maybe last year, I cared about my height. Like, I actually didn't think about it. I knew I was short, but I was like, that was my identity. And when I was in high school, like, girls thought I was cute.
Which can get you pretty far.
Yeah. Like, I never had problems with having girlfriends and stuff when I was in, like, middle school or high school. But you said things have changed now.
Height has become really important in the sexual marketplace, probably inappropriately important. To give you kind of a piece of reference, 49%, so basically half of women on Tinder, which allows for the filtering of height, set their height requirement at 6 feet.
Wow.
Now, in America, only 14% of men are at least 6 feet tall. I'm sure it's even less in Japan. So you have 50% of the women only looking at 14% of the men. Of course, at least some of those men are married or in relationships who won't reciprocate their attention. Considering that about half of men over 30 are married, that 14% drops to 7%.
Wow.
So now we have half the women functionally ignoring 93% of men.
Wow.
And that creates inordinate intrasexual competition. That is sort of like 6 or 7 women to every 1 man.
Yep, that makes sense.
And what's the odds that that woman is going to be better than the other 6 or 7 to that man? And what's the odds that the man who can get 6 or 7 or more is going to commit to any one of those women? So this is kind of a positive feedback loop. Is a lot of the things that men do to get status, to become attractive, to be wealthy, is consciously or not designed for them to capture better options in the sexual marketplace. Men will invent an 8th day in the week if it means that it would improve their chances of getting with women.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how it is. And so if you have tall, successful, attractive, famous men, and all of those things generally require a great deal of effort to produce and to maintain. And if they do succeed in capturing female attention, like any woman who looks at a guy and says, that guy doesn't suck, that guy is attractive, there's at least 100 other women who think the same thing.
Yes. Women are a lot less varied than men. Men are a lot more likely to find, there's a lot more types of porn for guys than there is for girls. So let's say, some guys are into fat chicks. Some guys, women are usually like this one type of handsome guy is what I'm trying to say.
I don't know. And I don't know if it's always handsome. Like if you look at romance novels, which are basically female literary pornography, they're story-based, emotionally based pornography. The men there are not always traditionally attractive. Yes, they can be tall and rugged, but they're often very beastly, if not monstrous. I mean,
like Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast, or you have like the vampires and werewolves in Twilight. Some of the more out there romantasy novels involve monsters and various creatures. You can think of like The Shape of Water, the Academy Award-winning.
Yeah, I never saw it.
It's a great movie. It takes place in the 50s, and a woman falls in love with like a fish man.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
That's so weird.
It's very erotic, too. It's very emotionally moving. So it's wrong to say, I think, that the women like these men in spite of their appearances. I think in some way they like them because of their appearances.
Then let me ask a question. Why do women find beasts or monsters or maybe something evil attractive when they do find a Chad, good-looking guy attractive too?
Well, I do think that there's more than one way. Like there's the kind of feminine pretty boys that you have a lot in Japan.
Yeah, what is that? Like I always wonder that about the West, because just, we think of most women liking a muscular man, very feminine, but then you'll see like some emo band guy who's like pale and skinny, but chicks throw themselves at
They
them.
can. I do think that there are different archetypes. I think it's wrong to believe that women all want the same type of man.
Okay.
But there are not unlimited archetypes, and the more that a guy aligns with one of these archetypes, the easier time he's going to have in the sexual marketplace.
I can say something funny. I heard this from a Japanese guy that there'll be Japanese guys that live in maybe Eastern Europe or something, and some of them will say they're Korean because it gives the Korean archetype of like K-pop idols.
Korea is having a moment. They're very popular. There's actually a number of women who, under the influence of some of these dramas, have gone to Korea to look for a husband. They think they're just going to walk around the streets and have a meet cute and fall in love with some chiseled, feminine, billionaire Korean man.
Yeah.
And they are disappointed. In fact, this is a problem in other parts of the world as well. Maybe you've heard, but the Chinese Communist Party has outlawed certain TV dramas. These are dramas like K-dramas that generally feature a fairly average or run-of-the-mill woman, which is generally the case in these like Twilight or 50 Shades of Grey or in these romantasy novels. The woman kind of has to be plain and average so that the reader can project their identity onto them. If they were too remarkably beautiful, it would be hard for the viewer or the reader to identify with them. So they're generally very average and average-looking women who become the intense interest of beautiful, rich, powerful men. They just like become obsessed with these women. And the Chinese Communist Party has concluded that these popular dramas are giving women inappropriate ideas about what to expect in the sexual marketplace. And this is a non-insignificant problem because China has an enormous population collapse issue that they're facing due to the ramifications of their one-child policy for several decades. And so women are marrying later in life, which generally means fewer children. Fewer women are getting married. I think for the first time in American history, more women over 40 have given birth than women under 20.
That's crazy.
It's amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So there's a lot of narratives in the culture that say that men suck and that even an average woman should expect princess treatment, for lack of a better word.
Well, we might have mentioned this before, but like with OnlyFans or these fan sites, women who would never have been considered sexual, I mean, I just mean media-wise, like sexual idols. Like in the 90s, you had to be like on Sports Illustrated or Victoria's Secret, and then you were a sexy girl. Now there's like, OnlyFans for any type of girl you could.
Sure. And there is some truth to this. Sometimes women are not actually very beautiful or attractive, but they have a great deal of confidence. And sometimes that bewitches the male attention. Like a woman who's not conventionally attractive can walk in a very seductive way, can wear very seductive clothing, can wear that sexuality on her sleeve, and that will be attractive to a significant proportion of men.
It can be the opposite though too, right? Like a guy who's not. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I prefer kind of like the girl next door type of.
Oh, no. I'm saying like as a guy, you can not be traditionally super good looking and tall, and somehow your confidence is projected in women like you.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Like I said, there are these different archetypes. One of them is the bad boy. So one of the reasons why I think women tend to like the monstrous guys is that they, on some level, feel safer with these men.
And do you mean in these romance model? Books?
But also in real life. It's sort of like they choose dangerous men, which seems paradoxical for a sex that is more concerned about safety and security, right? But the reason they do that is actually quite simple. It's like if they go up to the most dangerous, threatening-looking man at a bar, they only have to worry about whether he's going to start something with her because no other guy is going to start something with him.
Yes.
So she only really has to be concerned about one guy, and if she can succeed in getting him to be emotionally interested in her, then his danger actually becomes a protective factor.
Yep.
And that's why dangerous men feel safe to women.
So are you saying this is probably why subconsciously women are attracted to novels with monsters or vampires?
Absolutely. The idea is that he could hurt her but chooses not to.
Wow. Whereas
a lot of men make the mistake to come off as harmless. They think women want safety, so I'm going to try to reassure them that under no circumstances would I ever harm a fly. I'm just the nicest, sweetest man, and so they have nothing to fear from me. Unfortunately, they might not have anything to fear from those men, but they might not have any desire for those men either. Fear and desire, paradoxically, live very close to each other in the female imagination.
Interesting. I think Japan is mirroring the United States. It's definitely behind in how bad it's gotten. Like, as you were saying, I didn't really have that many problems being short when I was in high school, but I can imagine now it would be a big problem. I think, as we talked about, women's expectations are a lot higher and are becoming...
Well, I mean, that's insane. Like 6 feet, the average height of an American man is 5'9". So imagine if a woman who was just average attractive, not ugly, just average attractive, which most women are, like by definition, going to be average attractive, and the vast majority of men wouldn't even consider her for a date, wouldn't even talk to her, wouldn't even match with her on an app. Like, that would be a serious problem, and on some level, dating and relationships would more or less grind to a halt. If men en masse decided that we're only going to be working with the 14% most attractive women in this country, that leaves out 86% of women. That's the vast majority of women. I mean, that are just excluded. They're not even shown to men.
Didn't you even... We were talking about off camera, you said that like a shorter man will have to make this much more amount of money to...
There was a really interesting study that I read the other day. It was trying to quantify the value of height to a woman in the sexual marketplace. And so basically what these researchers did is they anchored women with a 5'11" and a 5'11.5" inches tall man. I don't know what that is in centimeters.
I'm not sure. Maybe 171, 172. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they said that this man makes $100,000 a year, which I think is 2.5 times the median salary of a salaryman in Japan.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. And this person is already significantly above average height, right? But would still be excluded by half of women on a dating app because he's not 6 feet tall. In any case, they tried to figure out how much more money a shorter man would have to earn to be perceived as equally attractive by women as this man who's 172 centimeters and makes $100,000 a year.
Yeah, maybe it was 175, but something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So 5'11", right?
Yes, 5'11.5". So what they discovered from the evidence of the women's reports is that a man who is 5'8", which is slightly below average height, would have to earn an additional $140,000 a year to be perceived as equally attractive as the 5'11.5" guy.
Wow, $140,000.
In addition, so he would have to make $240,000 a year, which is 5 or 6 times the median income of a Japanese salaryman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hilarious.
Only 1 in 30 men, maybe 1 in 35 men in America make that much. This is also part of the issue with there's no good men.
Yes.
And why women think today that they don't need a man, which is somewhat true. Like, a lot of women have their jobs. They can pay their own bills. They live in a relatively safe society. The infrastructure built and maintained by men can bring things to their doorstep and can take them where they want to go, et cetera, et cetera. They get accustomed to a certain level of lifestyle. So I'm going to use US dollars because that's what I'm more familiar with. So 1 in 6 women in America earn $100,000 a year. Which
is quite a lot.
It is. It's not a lot if you live in San Francisco or New York.
Oh, I don't mean money-wise. I mean, that's a lot of people. 1 in 6.
1 in 6?
Yeah.
Well, it's very expensive to live in America.
Yeah, that's true. Much more expensive than Japan.
It's way more expensive than Japan. So it sounds like a lot of money. In many parts of the world, it is a lot of money. But a person who earns $100,000 in San Francisco, we call them Bay Area poor because they're still going to be spending like 50% of their income on utilities, rent, and basic subsidies for living. Okay, so 1 in 6 women make $100,000 a year. So women generally get married and get into long-term relationships with men who will make their lives better. Like, on some level, they're more rational than men are. That's why they're saying, I'm not going to just be with a man who sucks just so that I can get married, just so that I can be in a relationship, because I'm doing more or less okay on my own. So for me to consider a man for a long-term relationship, he needs to be able to offer me something significantly better than what I have. Okay? So this is why a woman who's making $100,000 is probably not going to be marrying a man who's making $100,000.
Yes.
Because unless they want to keep working forever, that woman would find it very difficult to stop working and raise children. Why? Well, let's assume that children children require at least $20,000 a year to raise. So you take that guy's only making 100,000. You subtract 20, you have 80,000.
Yeah.
You split that between two adults. That's $40,000 a year. But this woman had been used to living on her own with a lifestyle that's $100,000 a year, right? So this is a significant drop in lifestyle quality for this woman. So for the numbers I just described, that woman would need to meet a man who makes at least $220,000 a year, $20,000 for the kids, and then half, $100,000 for him, $100,000 for her, to have kind of the same level of lifestyle. 1 in 6 women earn $100,000 a year. Only 1 in 35 men earn at least $220,000 a year. So that is a very skewed ratio, and most of those women are shooting for this smaller and smaller percent of hyper successful men. And of course, one of the reasons the men get so successful is so that they can enjoy all kinds of abundance in the sexual marketplace with women. So these women are all targeting the same small group of men, which makes it more likely that any of those women will end up with him. And because there's so many of those women, it makes it increasingly unlikely that the man is going to end up with any one of them, which creates this kind of runaway positive feedback loop.
Is this just, I'm going to make it as simple as possible, is this bad what's happening around the world?
It's, on some level, it's bad in the sense that for better or for worse, long-term relationships are sort of the bedrock of society. Like, we kind of want stable households to raise children to become social citizens, like good citizens, that they can have jobs and contribute back to the society, and the society can kind of perpetuate itself. Now, you clearly don't need a long-term relationship to have children, but most people, I think, would prefer to have children within a long-term relationship if they have the option. And so with fewer long-term relationships being transacted, the birth rate goes down, and that's going to destabilize society, which is probably why cultures like Japan are going so in on robotics and AI, because they have a population collapse problem as well. They're even further advanced than China.
Oh, really? Is Japan worse?
Yeah. If you see the curve, Japan is actually on the other side of the apex. They're on the decline. China's still approaching the apex. They're not quite there yet. Japan's on the other side of it. So
one other simple question. Stupid simple. Whose fault is this?
I don't know. It would be hard to point the blame at any one person or sex or institution. I think we got here through good intentions. We got here by making the world more comfortable, more accessible, easier for the individual to navigate. And I think that when you have a lot, you need other people less. We see that all over the world. When people are really poor, they form very tight-knit communities. Because if you don't have anything yourself, you really need other people. And you know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who can help you out with that.
This is easy to see if you parts of Latin America or Southeast Asia, stuff like that, right?
Yeah, it makes all the sense in the world. You need other people to survive. But let's take the opposite extreme. Let's say that you're a billionaire. Why do you really need anybody? You can live in a big complex. You don't have to see another person as long as you live. You can have deliveries put to your door. If someone doesn't work, you just fire them. You get rid of anybody who disrespects you or talks badly. You only have people around you who are serving your interests at the time. So I do think that as GDP goes up, marriage and birth rates go down, and people tend to live more isolated lives. We see that in a lot of the more advanced societies in the world, is there's sort of an alienation that tends to separate people from each other that doesn't really exist in poor countries, for better or for worse, right? So, and why did we advance society? Because life is really hard when you're poor. So we wanted to make life easier and more comfortable for more people, and we succeeded, and it turns out we don't need each other nearly as much as we used to. And maybe the reason why we never really liked a lot of the people, but we kept them around because it was a matter of survival. I do think that we tend to romanticize the previous generation's marriages inappropriately. Like, a lot of our grandparents maybe were married for 60 or 70 years, but it also could have been the case that they got married because they were horny teenagers, and that was the only way that they could scratch that itch. And they stayed married not because they loved each other or because it was a functional relationship, but because it was illegal to get divorced. Now, for better or for worse, sex precedes commitment. You don't have to get married to have sex. Marriage is an at-will agreement. Often in some countries like the US, the person can instigate the divorce and leave with cash and prizes. So there's an incentive in many cases to end marriages. And people tend to outgrow each other, even in the best scenarios. Every 10 years or so, you become a different version of yourself. Your partner becomes a different version of herself. What's the likelihood that those new versions are also going to be the best option for each other? It's actually very difficult to stay married long term.
Yes.
There requires a great deal of like a balance. You have to allow people to grow and to change and to evolve, or else the relationship becomes rigid and stagnant. But if they change too much, then you both tend to move in opposite directions.
Just different people.
You're just different people and you drift apart. And at best case, in that case, you just end up being kind of housemates.
Yeah.
Living under the same roof, because it's just too difficult to disrupt the comfortable stability that you've developed. But I think we would be hard pressed to say that that's an optimal outcome.
Yes. I asked you this last time, and I want to end on the same note. And I think I asked about advice in general to people watching. If you're going to give a piece of advice to women and then a separate piece of advice to men, just a simple,
the simplest piece of advice to women is be really honest with yourself. There's going to be some women who don't want to have children, like authentically and legitimately. But we know from the research that 90% of the women who end up childless did so unintentionally. They always thought that they would end up getting married. They would always thought that they'd end up having children, but their time just ran out. Women, for better or for worse, operate under more abbreviated timelines than men do. I don't make the news, I just report it. That's just the way that it is. And I do think that almost everything a woman wants to do, she can do after she gets married. And it's never going to be easier for a woman to attract a high-value man than when she's younger and more attractive.
What age would you just shoot at?
We know from the research that men think like a 22-year-old woman is the height of her attractiveness.
Interesting.
22. And that's, again, I don't make the news, I just report it. That's tough because a 22-year-old is barely an adult in some respects.
Yes.
And she doesn't necessarily know who she is or what she wants, but that's when she's handed by men the most power, the most optionality. And if she then squanders it on simply a career to pay her rent, that kind of puts her into a dead-end street sometimes. Or if, on the other hand, she tries to monetize that with OnlyFans, she could make a lot of money, but that might potentially put her into a different dead end with respect to children or long-term partnership further down the road.
So be honest with yourself. Understand what you really actually want.
Yes, that's certainly part of it. And to everything is a season. It's so much easier at 35 for a woman who has been a wife and a mother to say, I want to see what it's like to be an employee at 35 and to enter the workforce, than it is a woman at 35 who's been an employee to say, I now want to be a wife and a mother. Women can have everything, but they can't have everything all at once, and they can't necessarily have it when they want it. Just like there are seasons to food, right? It's hard to get strawberries in the middle of winter,
I think in Japan, that's like the season.
Is it?
Yeah.
Maybe I made a bad metaphor. So, but there's clearly seasonality to food, right?
Yes,
and demanding that you need or want this food now when it's not in season is probably not very smart.
Having a hot chocolate shop in Japanese summer would be
It'd be tough. Maybe you can get those strawberries shipped in from Argentina, but it's going to be really expensive. So that's part of the metaphor.
Interesting. All right. Well, how about one about men?
Men, the average man is passed over. That's the unfortunate reality, is that if you want to have a decent life as a man, you have to work at becoming an extraordinary individual. Being just an average guy doesn't work anymore. For many generations, perhaps for hundreds or thousands of years, for better or for worse, you could be a decent average dude and still reasonably expect to get married, to have a family, to have a livelihood. I don't think that's the case anymore, or it's increasingly becoming difficult to do that. We're living in extraordinary times because of the internet, because of social media. There's no little small ponds anymore. You can't be like the big man in your town. You're now in one gigantic ocean, and there are big whales out there. And this can be very demoralizing, especially for young men, because they start at the bottom of every status hierarchy. But you have to understand, men, that you are a long-term investment. Like, you are only going to start bearing good dividends after 10 or 15 years if you do the right thing. And there's actually no hope that just because you tried, you will succeed. But the alternative of not trying, I don't think that that's worth it. I mean, I think you have to make the effort. And the idea is to prioritize as best you can to be extraordinary. Extraordinary in terms of your income, extraordinary in terms of your looks, extraordinary in terms of your fame or your social status. These are the things that are going to make your life so much better. And with that is going to come more opportunities in business, more opportunities for women, a greater social network. All these things are connected. And I don't think that it's enough to just kind of bank on the fact that you're not a bad guy. Not a bad guy is not a selling point. That's like saying I don't do drugs and I haven't committed any crimes. It's like, okay, but what do you do? What positive assets do you have? It's like saying this camera. What's great about this camera is it doesn't explode.
Yeah.
It's like, would you buy a camera, especially an expensive camera, just because it didn't explode? Like, what good do you have? And again, be honest with yourself and think, I don't have that much good, but that I can develop those good things through concerted effort and discipline over time. And ultimately, that's going to benefit you first and foremost. And it will only secondarily benefit women if you choose to have them in your life. The idea here is to go for abundance. And abundance requires sacrifice, delayed gratification, skill, effort, and consistency. So that's what I would say to men, is especially young men, focus on leveling up, and the women can come later.
Awesome. Great advice. Let's also talk about your new book.
Thanks, man. Yeah. It's a bit of a departure. As we talked about today, I usually talk about women, relationships, intersexual dynamics. That's what my first book was about. This book is actually a work of fiction. It's called Starry Night, after Vincent van Gogh's most famous painting. And it's a fictionalized account of the final 10 weeks of his life before he decided to kill himself.
Why did you decide to write this?
I have been obsessed with this story since I was like 19 years old when I heard about it. I wrote a one-act play about it when I was in college. So this is a story that has been playing around in my mind for nearly 25 years. And I feel like I finally had the maturity and the experience to get the story out and to do it justice. I was we all love Van Gogh. I mean, people line up from all over the world to see his paintings in exhibition. He has a very beautiful and romantic view of reality. I resonate with it. I'm sure that you do too.
I do too. I've been to the Van Gogh Museum in Holland. So
it's very hard to dislike Van Gogh.
And it's kind of cool because he was very inspired by Japan, right?
Was he?
He was inspired by woodblock prints.
I didn't know that.
His earliest stuff looks like Japanese woodblock prints. It's very interesting.
Yeah, he was a painter only for 10 years, and most of the famous paintings that people know him for were done in the last 2 or 3. I've seen some of the earlier stuff. It looks very different than the stuff that we're used to seeing and celebrating. But I was fascinated by his story for a number of reasons. One is that now, he sells at exhibitions around the world. His paintings sell for hundreds of millions of dollars. But like I said, he sold one painting in his lifetime. He never had a relationship with a woman. In fact, he tended to scare them off. Like the incident where he cut off his ear generally involved a woman, which led to his voluntary hospitalization. He clearly was mentally ill. I think that ironically today, Vincent van Gogh would be considered a weird loser incel. And I wonder how many weird loser incels might actually have something in them that's good that might not just be recognized by the people around them today. I'm also, as you know, a psychologist, a therapist, and there is a great deal of issues around loneliness in men, as well as what they call deaths of despair. So deaths due to suicide or alcoholism or drug abuse. Vincent van Gogh did end up shooting himself, and he had a problem with alcohol, which certainly exacerbated his depression. And so I'm calling attention to these factors that go into helping to explain why someone might make this very permanent, very fatal decision. because it's happening every day. And it's not just the people who make this choice that their lives are affected. There's their family, their friends, their loved ones. It leaves behind a very painful legacy. So the goal of this book was to help people understand what, by putting them like in the world, as opposed to being academic about it, putting them in the story so that they can see and feel what might be going on inside of these people that led to that decision.
Great. By the way, if any Japanese people are interested in translating, you still haven't had them translated into Japanese, right?
Yeah, I would. I think this one might have a market in Japan. It's a bit of an unusual novel. It's told from various people's perspectives. Vincent's brother, Vincent's doctor, Vincent himself. All these people are real people, and it's based on real historical facts. It's available in ebook, audiobook, and paperback formats. You can get it on Amazon.
And your other book is available too, The Value of Others.
The Value of Others is available in ebook, audiobook, and paperback formats on Amazon. It's a bestseller. It would have been on the New York Times bestseller list in 2025 if they included self-published books, which they don't. But it's sold nearly 100,000 copies since it came out about a year and a half ago, which is
awesome.
Astounding for a self-published book without marketing.
That's amazing. Yeah, definitely. If anybody's interested, check it out. Or if you're interested in working with Orion, you can shoot me a mail, or I'll put Orion's YouTube channel and his social media links.
Especially if you have connections with a Japanese publishing.
Yes, please. That would be the best. Yeah. No crazy people. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, man.
Nick, it was great to have you on.
Thanks, guys. Bye.